Yo, 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 what up, dogs? In this video, I will be going through my journey, my 6-month journey, betting with the Trademate Sports software. I will explain why I quit the project. I'll go through the results after 4,716 bets, and I will give you some takeaways if you are considering subscribing to the software. 6 months ago, I decided I wanted to give Trademate Sports a shot and decided to fund my account with 25,000 Norwegian crowns and decided I wanted to do at least 10,000 bets for a project I called Highway to Value Town. Trademate Sports is a value betting software that alerts you if there is a value betting opportunity on the soft bookmakers. What they basically do is compare the odds between the sharp bookies and the soft bookies, and if you find a better odds at the soft bookies, the software will alert you. You can then register your bet if you place it in the software, and the software will track your progress along the way. Now, I decided to do this 6 months ago, and I decided to, like I said, place 10,000 bets. I just decided to quit the project after 4,716 bets. And the reason for that is that I had lost 85% of my bankroll, and I don't want to spend more time regaining that money. I also feel that I did get enough information or value out of this project with basically half the bets than was initially planned. So I'm actually quite happy with it. Now, just because I lost 85% of my starting bankroll does not mean that I've lost faith in the software. I actually still believe in the software and in the concept of value betting and in the concept of getting favorable odds on the soft bookies versus the sharp ones. What I did underestimate in the beginning was the variance. So that's the number one takeaway from this project, that the variance is probably much higher than you think it is. So let's dive into the results of the project. So I placed 4,716 bets. I lost 22,178 Norwegian crowns, and that's equivalent to a negative 3.5% average ROI per bet. And in total, I lost 85%. Without refunding the account, it would take a very long time to recoup my losses and even get back to break even. So even though I didn't lost 100% of my money, I consider this that I busted, basically. So the presets that I decided to run with in the beginning, so let's go to the analytics page. The presets I chose in the beginning was only on the recommended league, so I only placed bets on the recommended leagues. I ran, my risk parameters were 50% of Kelly, which is higher than Trademate Sports recommend. In fact, so at the time I started, Trademate Sports recommended to run your betting with 25% of Kelly, and just recently they even lowered that recommended amount to 20% of Kelly. I ran at 50%, so I was very aggressive, and I kind of regret being that aggressive, but that still doesn't change the facts or my sort of results. My having, if I had run the project at 25% Kelly instead of 50%, the only difference would have been I would have lost half of what I actually did. So, but that wouldn't have given me any more information than my project already did. So let's look into the results. So obviously here you can see the graph. It was, if I remove the EV and closing EV, you can see my results better. I was consistently losing in the first 1,400 bets. It flattened out, and I had a period of a couple of thousand bets where things were going or trending slightly upwards until it turned around again. I can't remember having changed any of my presets or strategy at this turning point right here or at the turning point right here. So this is pure variance. I did change my presets somewhere along the way, but not at the turning points. So they didn't contribute to my results going in either direction. So here you see the results. If I add my closing EV line, here you see the total amount of expected value that I accumulated along the way. So in total, that was slightly above 14,000 Norwegian crowns. Over 4,700 bets, that's actually pretty low. But in total, that would amount to 2.2, or on average, that would be 2.2% edge on each bet, which is, I think, if you look at their community stats, pretty much that is the sort of standard number of all their users. They gain approximately somewhere between 2 and 2.5% edge on average on each bet. Now, let's add the profits or the equity line here. And again, here you can see I was drifting pretty far away. Actually, I was drifting further and further away from my closing EV line for each 1,000 bet. So, and this, you would think, when you see this, you would think this concept of value betting does not work. But to be honest with you, I think it does work. The variance is just so much higher than you probably think. So we'll talk about this at the end when we talk about the takeaways. So let's break down my bets through the different sports to begin with. Okay, so for soccer, it was a negative project, a negative sport, so to speak, down 5.5K on soccer. Actually, the graph looks pretty much like my total graph, so it represents my total results pretty well. Tennis, I had only 600 bets on tennis, but was also unprofitable. What about American football? I don't think I placed any bets on American football. Nope. What about ice hockey? So I was actually profitable in ice hockey. I only had, slightly over 1K bets on ice hockey, but I think that might have been my only profitable sport. Basketball, I know I had a lot of bets on basketball. 1,000 bets on basketball. Wow, consistently losing. So basketball was terrible for me. Really down, how much? 11K. Yeah, so that's what basketball represents half of my total losses. What about baseball? Only 180 bets, also a consistent loser. What about rugby? Let's add both rugby leagues in here. Rugby union, rugby league. Let's see. Only 50 bets, break even pretty much. Didn't contribute much either way. And let's have a look at CSGO and Dota, some esports in there. Not many bets, 30 bets, slightly down 1K. So there you have it, broken down by sports. So not much takeaways from there. We can have a look at the different odds types. 1x2 down, although not that much. So I think this odds type was actually one of the better performers. Moneyline, Moneyline doesn't show any stats for some reason. Spread, nothing. I'm not sure what they define as spread and Moneyline here. Asian handicaps. I have a lot of those. Yeah, down what 9K on Asian handicap. Tennis set handicap. Let's have a look at that. Slightly down, or only 60 bets. Tennis game handicap. Also break even pretty much after 130 bets. Over unders. Should be a lot of bets there. 1,400 bets on over and unders. Down, yeah, right above 7K. Tennis set over and under, okay. Yeah, no bets there. All right, so that's broken down by odds types. Let's have a look at the odds ranges. This might actually be slightly more interesting. So if we check the low odds range, so let's say anything between 1 and 1.5. 1.5. There we go. And see how I did there. Actually, pretty good in profit. So 400 of my, it's basically, yeah, a little less than 10% were in that odds range between 1 and 1.5. And I was actually in profit in those. What about 1.5? 1. Come on. I want to give me, there we go, 1.5 and let's say 2, or let's say 2.1. We can do 2.1 here. Slightly higher odds range. And there, suddenly, I'm down 8K. Wow. And most of my bets, or half, you can see almost half of my bets were in this odds range between 1.5 and 2.2. Down quite a lot. That's sort of interesting. Okay, so let's look at anything above that. So let's say 2.1 and let's say 5 there to look at the higher ranges. And also down 11K. Okay, cool. So I don't know what to tell you about that. You know, this sample size of almost 5,000 bets should be meaningful. And if we were to interpret these results, you know, you want to stick with the lower end range of the odds. Let's have a look at the edges then. So if we look at the edge, so let's look at the edge. I think this is the edge placed. So what the edge is when you place it, not the closing edge, because those might vary. Let's look at any edge between 0 and 2%, down 10K. Okay. Almost as expected. So the idea here is that if the higher the edge, the higher the likelihood of profits. So the lower edge range here should be negative almost. You can put it that way. So let's see anything between 2 and 4. So I was down 10K here. Ooh, down even more here. So to me, that doesn't quite make sense. I should be making more or losing less with the higher odds range. But let's look at between 4 and 6 then, or we can put this higher. Let's say 4 and 10%. And there we go. Here I'm in profit. So this makes sense, right? So I'm actually healthy profit here, 850 bets. And this is where I made money on the higher edge bets. We can look. Okay, so let's look at a sample size of 10 and above. So let's say between 10 and 100% edge. This obviously should be a very, very low sample size. Yeah, only 80 bets, and you know it's too low to make any sense of. And I'm even losing slightly here, basically break even. So there you go. So any edge between 4 and 10% has been profitable for me so far. Let's have a look. Do we have anything else interesting to check? We can check hours before game time. So let's say the last 2 hours. So that means let's see what happens if we look at all the bets that are placed less than 2 hours before the game actually starts. There you go, down 13K. So more than half of my losses actually. So I think they say that, or the deal is that the closer to game start that you place your bet, the less the variance should be in between the edge place, or what the edge is when you place it, and the closing edge. But apparently this has not served me well, placing them that late. So let's see, between 2 and 4 hours, how the results have been there. Also negative, although not that much, down 2K. Okay, what about between, let's say, 4 and 8 hours before game time? Also down slightly more. Okay, anything above 8. So most of my bets, or my presets, were set to 12 hours before game time. So I was given value bets anywhere between 0 and 12 hours before game time. That's what I placed. So if I do 14 here, we'll get most of these bets. And wow, look at that. Look at that last run. Absolutely terrible. So I was actually profitable here. And then on these settings, and then boom, straight down on the last, 500 bets or so. So ended up down 4,000, having been up 4,000. So yeah, I guess this illustrates the variance you can expect here. So having looked at all these stats and different settings and played around with it, to be honest with you, it doesn't give me much information. I think this is all variance, because let's say, okay, 5,000 bets should be a decent sample size, and you see these results based on the different settings. Like, what would you, like, if you were to set your presets, what would you take away from this? If you ask me, there's not much of a takeaway. Maybe you would move the edge. So whenever you create your preset, you want to have an edge of 4% or higher as you place it, but that will dramatically reduce the volume that you'll be able to place. And volume is important to even out the variance. So you can see, even for me, after almost 5,000 bets, this is a high variance game, basically. So you can place thousands of bets and with an edge and still be down. So I think that's the, well, obviously that's the main takeaway from this, but we'll go through some other takeaways as well. So I think that's it for the analysis here. You've seen that. So let's summarize the key takeaways that I've learned from placing 5,000 bets with Trademate Sports over the last 6 months. So here we go. My key takeaways after my 5,000 bets with Trademate Sports. Expect variance to be a lot higher than you think. I think this is the most important takeaway from the project. I had my expectations going in. I knew the possibility, or I knew the risk, that I might lose money even after 10,000 bets, or 5,000 bets, or 2,000 bets, or whatever. But I did underestimate that the variance in that even after 5,000 bets, I was down that much. So I basically busted after 5,000 bets. Now, that, like I said earlier in the video, that does not mean that I think that this concept of value betting does not work. In fact, I think it does work if you do get better odds than Pinnacle offers and you bet on them. You will, on average, have an edge, and you will be profitable in the very, very long term. There are ways you can reduce variance, and we saw that in my numbers, that the higher edge you place your bets with, the more profitable you're going to be, or that's the higher likelihood of being profitable, obviously. Now, You could also have, or one way to reduce your variance is by having access to a lot of different bookies, because that will do a couple of things for you. First of all, it will give you more value bets, right? So the more bookies you have, obviously the more bets and opportunities you're going to get. And it will give you, by the same definition, the opportunity to place more bets. So you get more value bets, and you're also being able to place more bets. Basically the same thing, but I think they're a little bit different. So again, my second takeaway is use a lot of bookies if you can. It offers more value bets, and also you will get limited. You will get limited on some of these bookies, so you need backups. And if you're starting out with, let's say, 2 or 3 bookies, I think that's too few, because you might risk going, 2 weeks in, and you're limited on 2 of your 3 bookies, and then you're basically done. You could get by 1 bookie, but the chances are extremely low. So, and also by betting on many different bookies, you're spreading your bets out between them, because if you concentrate most of your bets on one single bookie, or 2 bookies, etc., that's also contributing to a higher likelihood of getting limited. So I think volume, they will see that you bet a lot on their different bookies, and they will sort of look at it's a higher chance that they might look at your account the more you bet, regardless of whether you're winning or losing. Takeaway number 3, payment option. It's actually a risk that is not defined anywhere on Trademate Sports website, and it's sort of a hidden risk, because what happened to me is I used EcoPace, which was like an online wallet thing, for moving my money around between all the bookies. Most of the bookies, when I started out this project, accepted EcoPace as a payment option. What happened after a month or 2 was that EcoPace shut down for Norwegian clients, and suddenly I couldn't move the money around as efficiently as I could before. So it took a lot longer for me to take out money and deposit it back into the other bookies, or the other accounts. And you're going to have to do this, because when you use a lot of bookies, and you spread your bankroll around these bookies, you're going to lose and win money, right, on these different bookies, and you're going to bust on one of the accounts. So you need to refill that account. So you need to move this money around, and by having an online e-wallet, that will obviously help you out. But remember, there's a risk they might shut down, they might go broke, bankrupt, whatever reason, or they may shut down your country. And that's an extra risk that I did not think about before starting. So, and also, so being able to have a lot of payment options, this depends obviously on where you are located. But if you have less payment options, you will have reduced access to bookies, because some of these bookies I didn't have access to, because I didn't have access to the payment options that they offered. And yeah, as you see in the third point here, there's more hassle to move money if you don't have access to an e-wallet. And finally, my takeaway here, if you're considering subscribing to Trademate Sports, check your expectations. You should have very, very, very sober expectations. And I think this video and my project is proof of that. I think the fact that I busted basically my project, I attribute that to being unlucky, basically having a very, very bad run and a bad timing, because I ran bad basically right off the bat of my project. Now that's extra bad, because if you start off losing right from the very beginning, you're gonna, obviously your bet sizing will reduce and reduce and reduce, as you're losing. And in the end, like what happened to me, if you only have 15% left of your starting bankroll, it's going to take a very long time to recoup that with your stake sizing at that time. So have sober expectations. It's definitely not risk-free. If you bet long enough, you will have a bad run, maybe a similar bad run like I had. But if you're able to stick to it and bet even longer, my contention is that you will be profitable. So that's it for me for this project. If there was something that I did not cover in this video and you want some questions answered, please just ask those questions in the comments. I will promise I will reply to each and every one of you. And if you decide to subscribe to Trademate Sports, good luck, and keep in mind to check your expectations before you start. Peace out, guys.